All rise. Veuillez vous lever. The International Criminal Court is now in session. L'audience de la Cour pénale internationale est ouverte. Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
L'audience est ouverte.
Judge Mindwa, the hearing shall now commence. Good afternoon. Everyone is already seated, I believe. Please take your seats. I would like to welcome all of you. And before I begin, I would like to recall that the Chamber authorized the presence of photographers in the courtroom for them to take photographs, and that is what they are doing right now. Thank you very much. You can now leave the courtroom. Without further ado, I would like to call on the court officer now to call the case. Court officer, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Your Honors. The situation in the Central African Republic, 2, in the case of the prosecutor versus Patrice Edouard Ngai ssona, case reference ICC 0114-0218, and for the record, we are in open session.
Merci beaucoup.
Judge Mindwa, thank you very much. Now I would like to ask the parties to introduce themselves, beginning with the office of the prosecutor. But before that, I would like to ask everyone to please speak slowly and to observe a pause before answering the questions so as to enable the interpreters to do their work correctly. And now I would like you, Madam Prosecutor, to introduce yourself and the members of your team.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, honorable judges, the Office of the Prosecutor is represented today by Mr. James Stewart, Deputy Prosecutor, Mr. Kweku Van der Puy, Senior Trial Lawyer, Ms. Olivia Stryven, Trial Lawyer, Mr. Eric Iverson, Trial Lawyer, Mr. George Mugwanya, Appeals Counsel, Ms. Chantal Daniels, International Cooperation Advisor, and Mr. Yassine Mustafa, Case Manager, and myself, Fatou Bensouda, Prosecutor.
Microphone of the judge, please. Thank you very much, Madam Prosecutor. Now, Defense Counsel for Mr. Ngai ssona, please introduce yourselves. I would like to ask you to allow your client to introduce himself later. So you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. Your Honors, Eric Pluvier, lawyer in the Paris Bar and counsel for the defense. And pursuant to Regulation 6017, you have Maitre Keita Ludovic and another representative from the OPCV for the defense today. Judge Mindwa, thank you very much, Maitre Pluvier. Now I would like to ask the registry to present the members of their team. Mr. Dubuisson. Thank you, Mr. President. Your Honors, at the registry today, there is Rufina Kuzniarova, Associate External Relations and Cooperation Officer, Jamila Zufi Afifi, Associate Legal Officer, and myself, Marc Dubuisson, Director Division of Judicial Services, representing the Registrar.
Je voudrais m'adresser à Monsieur
George Mindwa. Thank you, Mr. Dubuisson. Now I would like to call on Mr. Ngai ssona to introduce himself. Please stand up. Please state your name as well as the date and place of your birth. Please switch on your microphone. Mr. Ngai ssona. Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Patrice Edouard Ngai. I am Central African, and I was born on the 30th of June, 1967 at Begwa, Bangui. George Mindwa, thank you very much. Please take your seat, Mr. Ngai ssona. Lastly, I would like to introduce myself as well as my colleagues. My name is Antoine Kesia Mbe Mindwa, and I am the president of Pre-Trial Chamber 2 of the court. To my right is George Tomoko Akane, and to my left is George Rosario Salvatore Aitala. I believe that it is useful to clarify the nature and scope of this hearing. It is important to remember that we are not dealing with a trial today, nor are we dealing with a confirmation of charges hearing. No evidence shall be presented or collected. There will not be any questions relating to the guilt or innocence of Mr. Ngai ssona. This means that the scope of this initial appearance shall be limited to 3 issues pursuant to Article 61 of the Rome Statute and Rule 121(1) of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence, which define the purpose of this hearing as follows. 1. The Chamber shall satisfy itself that the person who is the subject of the arrest warrant has been informed of the crimes which he or she is alleged to have committed. 2. The Chamber shall satisfy itself that this person has been informed of his or her rights under the statute. Lastly, the Chamber shall set a date on which it intends to hold a hearing to confirm the charges. Accordingly, I will deal with these 3 issues that are the subject of today's hearing, one after the other. First of all, I have to satisfy myself, pursuant to Article 60 of the Rome Statute, whether you were informed of the crimes charged against you, Mr. Ngai ssona. Were you informed of the crimes which you are supposed or alleged to have committed? Mr. Ngai-ssona, yes, Mr. President. Judge Mindwa, would you like that those crimes charged against you in the arrest warrant issued by the Chamber on the 7th of December 2018, do you want them to be reread for you? Maître Plouvier, they have been read. Judge Mindwa. Thank you, Maître Plouvier. Mr. Ngai-ssona, I have to also confirm that you have been well informed about all your rights under the Rome Statute, and in particular, its Article 67. Have you been informed of those rights, Mr. Ngai-ssona? Mr. Ngai-ssona, yes, Mr. President, I was informed. Judge Mindwa, thank you very well, Mr. Ngai-ssona. In any case, it is necessary to recapitulate some of these rights, which are of crucial importance at this stage of the proceedings. Amongst others, you have the following rights. You have the right to be informed promptly and in detail of the nature, cause, and content of the charges in a language which you fully understand and speak. Mr. Ngai-ssona, can you confirm which is or which are the languages that you fully understand and speak? Do you understand and speak French? Mr. Ngai-ssona, yes. But that does not prevent me from having a Sango interpreter for my questionings. Judge Mindwa, thank you, Mr. Ngai-ssona. You also have the right to have, free of any cost, the assistance of a competent interpreter and such translations as are necessary to meet the requirements of fairness. So you have the possibility to have that free of charge. You have the right to have adequate time and facilities for the preparation of your defense and to communicate freely with counsel of your choosing in confidence. And I can see that Maître Eric Plouvier is there to assist you. You have the right to remain silent and not to be compelled to testify against yourself or to confess guilt. You also have the right to give unsworn statements in your defense. In addition to any other disclosure provided for by the statute, the prosecutor shall, as soon as practicable, disclose to you evidence in the prosecutor's possession or control which is exculpatory or tends to show your innocence or to mitigate your guilt, or which may affect the credibility of prosecution evidence. At the confirmation of charges hearing, you may object to the charges, challenge the evidence presented by the prosecutor and present evidence. Lastly, you shall have the possibility to apply for interim release pending trial. Mr. Ngai, yes. George Mindwa, once again, I am addressing myself to you. Do you have any observations to make on the conditions of your transfer to the International Criminal Court or the conditions of your detention at the headquarters of the court in The Hague since your arrival? Mr. Ngai, Mr. President, I would like to ask my lawyer to give you some clarifications relating to my transfer. George Mindwa, very well. Maître Plouvier, thank you, Mr. President. I have some observations to make since Mr. Ngaisona's arrest on French territory. The first issue is the dignity relating to his custody, and we have reservations on certain procedural points. I will start with the first point. Mr. Ngaisona was arrested while in possession of a diplomatic passport with a visa and an official mission order in his capacity as the president of the Central African Football Federation. This means that his statute made him to have certain benefits on French territory, and the defense will come back to these points later. Secondly, Mr. Ngaisona was questioned by the gendarmerie of Paris this week while he was in custody. And during this questioning, there was no counsel, and there were attempts by the gendarmes to question him. But this was not allowed by Mr. Ngaisona, who preferred to remain silent. But those attempts were made, and this is contrary to the provisions of the statute. And now, relating to the detention conditions, they seem to be improved after Mr. Ngaisona's transfer to The Hague. But the standards were not the same on French territory. Mr. Ngaisona is a diabetic, and he did not receive the necessary medication during his arrest, and the cell was overcrowded. And I would like to add that when he was in custody at the gendarmerie, Mr. Ngaisona was not afforded the minimum hygienic conditions. And lastly, his counsel and family were not informed when the decision was taken to transfer Mr. Ngaisona to the Netherlands. Mr. Ngaisona, according to him, was handcuffed and in the Roissy airport, so his rights to dignity were not respected. So we have reservations on the issue of detention and transfer, and on points of legality relating to the transfer. George Mindwa, thank you very much. The chamber has heard you. You have raised three main issues. One, the arrest of Mr. Ngaisona in Paris while in possession of a diplomatic passport. And you have said yourself that this will be dealt with later. So the Chamber invites you to prepare your filings to be submitted subsequently. Secondly, you talked about his questioning by the investigative department of the gendarmerie in Paris without the presence of his lawyer. So you will also file a submission on that. Lastly, I asked a question about the conditions of detention of the suspect at The Hague. You have not made any complaints about that? Maître Pluvier, Mr. Ngai has just arrived. As I have said, according to him, the conditions are much, much better than in Paris, but he is still separated from the others. So, and we would like that everything be done for him to be able to communicate with his family and close relatives and friends, particularly his wife, George Mindwa. Very well, we will come back to these conditions, and they are better, but based on the information we have, he was consulted by the doctor at the detention center. In any case, the registry is present here and they will take this into account. I would like to correct something that you have said. This is a courtroom. You have talked about the cells of the French Republic. Well, we are not going to be talking about the French institutions all the time, but you should be more polite. Mr. Pluvier, you are totally correct, but I simply wanted to recall that he suffered those conditions on the basis of the arrest warrant issued by this court. George Mindwa, very well. We will wait for your submissions in due course. Mr. Ngai, thank you for your answers. Now, having been satisfied that the suspect has been informed of the crimes charged against him and his rights under the statute, I will now set the date for the confirmation of charges. This is the third point on our agenda in accordance with Rule 1211 of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence. Obviously, it is necessary to give the parties sufficient time to prepare themselves and participate effectively at the confirmation of charges hearing. Now, considering prior experience of this court in this area, the date selected for the confirmation of charges hearing shall be the 18th of June 2019. This date may be postponed by the Chamber based on the developments in the proceedings, either proprio motu or at the request of the prosecutor or the defense. The Chamber shall make a ruling on all written and reasoned applications filed to that effect. I would like to add that Rule 1212 of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence stipulates that the Chamber shall hold status conferences to ensure that the disclosure of evidence takes place under satisfactory conditions. Do the parties have anything to add? I turn first to the prosecutor. Madam Prosecutor, do you have anything to add?
Merci beaucoup.
George Mindwa, thank you very much, Madam Prosecutor. And now the defense. Maître Plouvier. Maître Plouvier, I have no comments. George Mindwa, thank you very much. We have now come to the end of this initial appearance in the case the prosecutor versus Patrice Edouard Ngai. I would like to seize this opportunity to thank all the participants in this hearing, the interpreters, the court reporters, and the security officers. I would like to thank those in the public gallery also. This hearing is now adjourned.